This is Empowering Women Everywhere. I am your host, Nan Gill, and today our guest is Marianne Sciucco. She is a registered nurse and an author, and she is one of the original founders of AlzAuthors, which is a global community of authors sharing their personal Alzheimer's and dementia stories to light the way for others. Great to have you here, Marianne.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nan.
Well, we're very anxious to hear about some of the work you've been doing and some of the plans you have for the future. So, tell us a little bit about your books to begin with.
My first novel is called Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story, and I wrote it based on a couple I met in my work as a registered nurse. It was a local couple, and she had come into the hospital with a fractured pelvis and ended up in the rehab unit, and my job was to set up the discharge plan, which was for her to go to an extended care facility until she was able to walk and to return home. And she was a very lovely woman, very pretty, but confused. And she was funny because she would say to me, "Oh, I'm so confused, I'm so mixed up." And that ended up being a line in my book. But her husband, he was very frail, and the remarkable thing about this couple is that they had driven all the way down from Florida, come back from Florida to New York State on their own without any mishap until they got home.
Right.
And then she had this fall. And so they became the characters in my book, Jack and Sarah. And it's based on a lot of other people that I met in my work. So
Basically, your work as a nurse put you in contact with people that had Alzheimer's
oh
or
yes,
dementia.
every day.
And,
every day.
So you actually drew from all of the experiences you had.
Yes.
And wrote the book on dementia.
And wrote this book, which is told from the male caregiver's point of view.
Okay.
Which was a little more unique because most people think caregivers are women. But there are a lot of men who are caring for their spouses, too. And
right.
I wanted to tell it from his perspective.
Yeah, it's very prevalent in the U.S. at this time.
Oh, yes, 5.8 million.
There's 5.8 million?
People who have Alzheimer's and dementia. So the way I look at it is every one of them has at least one person in their life who cares.
Right.
And we know that that's a small number because it's exponential. Most people have many, many people who care, even if it's a professional person or a caregiver. So millions of people are affected by this disease, and it's only going to grow.
Now, have they done any research as far as things that can help when you do have Alzheimer's?
Well, there's a lot of research out there, but there aren't any, magic cures. There's no magic pill or anything like that. Some people might like to say that they have found that, but it's not really well documented. So basically for people to take care of themselves would be to follow a very clean diet.
Right.
Eat healthy, just as you would like for heart health. A heart healthy diet is good for the brain as well. Try to avoid a lot of processed foods.
Right.
And use things in moderation. So when it comes to like alcohol and sweets and all the things we like to treat ourselves with, that should really be done in moderation. And stick to more of a Mediterranean diet is helpful.
Right.
Lots of protein, chicken, fish, vegetables, fruits, whole grains.
I heard that berries were good for you.
Berries are excellent. Blueberry is like a miracle food. It's a superfood, so that's good to eat a lot of blueberries.
Okay. All right. Now, tell us a little bit about AlzAuthors.
Well, AlzAuthors is an organization that I founded with two other women who had also written books about Alzheimer's. We did not know each other. One of them had reached out to me through social media on Twitter, and she had asked me to read her book, if I would be interested in reading her book. And it turns out that she had read my book and she loved it, and I didn't know this, but she was following me on social media. She said she was stalking me and learning from me on how to publish and market a book. So I agreed to take a look at the book, and it was wonderful. And that book is called Alzheimer's Daughter by Jean Lee. So she was my first partner. And it's very difficult to market a book about Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
I was running into some issues with that, and so I had the idea maybe I should recruit some other people who have written similar books to see if they want to
Right.
partner, and we can help cross-promote each other's books and raise awareness of Alzheimer's and dementia. So she was the first person I contacted, and she jumped on board immediately. And I said, do you know anybody else? And so she knew another woman whose book she'd read, Somebody Stole My Iron, Vicky Tapia. And Vicky was invited to join us, and she was a little skeptical at first because she thought, well, why do I want to help promote somebody else's book? It
Right.
seemed counterintuitive. But we explained that it's not like that at all, because people who are looking for these kind of books, number one, they might want to read more than one book.
Right, exactly.
And yeah, and maybe this book isn't the right one for them, but they might like somebody else's book, and at least we made sure that they got something.
Right. Well, you have three people working for a common cause.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have exponential results.
Exactly.
And is that what you found?
And that's what we found. And so we started building a little following, and we recruited 3 other authors to work with us as part of our management team. So now there are 6 of us.
Oh, wow. That's a
Yes,
good
we're
group.
scattered across the United States into Canada. I'm here in New York. One of my partners is in North Carolina, Ohio, Montana, Washington, and Toronto. And we worked together for years before we ever met. Everything is done through the internet. We work through Google Hangouts, have our meetings that way on our
Oh,
computers.
cool.
Yeah, so last year was the first time the 6 of us were all in the same place at the same time. And
Which
it
is
was
where?
wonderful. We went to the National Caregiving.com conference in Chicago,
Okay.
and we had a table there. We had a benefactor who provided us with a table so that we could display AlzAuthors in our books.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it was wonderful.
Well, you have a lot of books
I have a
here.
lot of books. We have over 200 books in our collection at this point.
Wow.
200 authors. And this is a very small sampling of the books that I actually have. All of these books have been donated to me for my traveling library, and I bring it with me when I do events for AlzAuthors. So I did one at my local library. I'll be doing one at a college coming up, and I'm available to bring the traveling library and talk about AlzAuthors and what we do to care homes and other agencies that are caring for the elderly.
Now, if someone wants you to come and give a talk, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, they can just send me an email,
Okay.
and I obviously can only go within about a 1-hour radius
Okay.
of my home.
But you have other people that...
We have traveling libraries in North Carolina, Ohio, and one starting in Washington right now.
Okay.
So people could connect with that, and we'll be recruiting some of the authors to have their own traveling libraries as well, because not everybody, but a lot of the authors are very active and they're doing events. So it's nice to talk about the books, and you can go on the website and look at them, but when people see them physically all together in one place with their beautiful covers and
Yeah.
their message of hope, then it moves people, and they're excited when they look at them.
I'm attracted to the child's book there, I Smile for Grandpa.
I Smile for Grandpa. This is one that was illustrated by my partner Catherine Harrison in Toronto, and she wrote another one called Weeds in Nana's Garden, which was based upon her experience with her own mother. And I don't have that book with me, unfortunately, but I do have this one. And we have other children's books as well, because children are often left out of the situation, although they are affected as much as anybody
yes, I'm
else.
sure
if
they
a loved
are.
one has dementia, could be their grandparent, could be a parent, because people young in their 50s now are being diagnosed, and maybe even younger, so it could be a parent. And if a parent is caring for their parent or loved one, that their attention is being diverted away from the child.
Right.
So children have a lot that they have to deal with when they're involved in something like this. So it's not really a good idea to try to protect them or shield them, because they're
Right.
they're living with it too.
And they should be involved where they
Yes.
feel that they can be a benefit and help.
Yes, and children are very resilient and forgiving, so things that, maybe that seem odd are not odd to them. And parents and grandchildren can continue to have a good time together, even if there's dementia.
Right. And they can just Google AlzAuthors and get in touch with-
AlzAuthors.com. Yeah, we have a website. We have a bookstore, online bookstore. We've published 2 anthologies. One of the first year's blog posts and second year's blog posts. Every week we feature a new author
Okay.
on our blog. And we have a multiple of genres that are available. We have fiction, nonfiction, memoir, caregiver guides, poetry, children's books, young adult and teen books, which this is one of them, Dating the It Guy from Kristen Lindsay Hager. She's got 2 books actually, because teenagers, like young children, they're involved as well.
Right.
It affects their life, so we have stories to help them in a gentle way, educate them about what's going on, especially in fiction. Fiction is an easy way to try to get a message across in a story form, where people are more amenable to reading something like that.
Now, you also have these books on audio, correct?
Some of the books are on audio. That's all according to the author.
Right.
All of my books are on audio, and our anthologies are on audio, and some of my partners as well. So if people are interested in audio books, they could definitely look at our books and see if
which
the one they
ones,
want is available in audio.
See which ones are available.
Yeah.
Probably request one if they want it.
You could ask the author, when are you going to put this in audio?
That's right.
It's
that's
not
right.
hard. I did it like 6 times, so it's not hard to make an audio book.
Now, you told me that you have met with the other people in your group in person a few
Yes.
times. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, last year we met for the first time in Chicago at a conference. It was very busy, and we didn't have a lot of time just for us.
Right.
So, and it was a short time. It was like a 3-day weekend, so it was like in and out, and everybody went back home. This year, we had a meeting in Florida. One of benefactors had a condo there and let us take the condo for a week.
Oh, that was
So
nice.
4 of us were able to come this time. And we spent a week together, and it wasn't a vacation. We worked very hard because just the ideas and the energy were just bouncing from, the time we got up till we went to bed at night. So we came up with our plan for next year. We have a lot of really exciting things in store for our followers, and just the friendships that we developed. And I think that's one of the most important things, is just strangers coming together over something that we experienced that was probably the worst thing we ever went through.
Right.
Nursing a parent through Alzheimer's and then its inevitable end. Many people get so immersed in their caregiving that they don't know what's going to happen when it's over. It's kind of like that letdown feeling, like, what do I do now?
Right.
So for many of my partners, writing their book was a way for them to not only heal themselves, but to share what they learned, because they didn't have that when they were going through their journey. They were floundering and searching for answers, and they
Right.
didn't want some, book by a doctor telling them what to do. They were looking for stories by real people that said, I made it, I
Right.
lived through this, and you can too. You will survive. So having AlzAuthors in their life has
Right.
given them a new lease on life. They're all in retirement age. Most of my partners, half of us anyway. So they're no longer, working.
Right.
And this has given them a whole new, it's like a full-time job.
Well, when you're going through the caregiving,
Mhm.
you're so involved with the day-to-day, you don't really have time to associate with other people.
Exactly. It's very isolating. The internet and groups that you can find on the internet through Facebook or other places can be very helpful
Right.
to people, because you can vent and you can talk about your problems and your issues and your feelings in a safe place. Because a lot of people, even people that you're close to in your life, they may not understand what you're going through or be empathetic. So a lot of people struggle with that sense of isolation. And many people have had to give up a lot to even care for that loved one. They may have had to give up their job. Some people have to give up their home.
Right.
People move across country to, go back home to stay with mom or dad and
Right.
take care of them and
Take care of
leave
them.
everything behind. So when it's over in 5, 10 years, however long it takes, could be more or less, they're kind of left with, what do I have now? So a lot of our authors have written their stories, which, our opinion is very important. Everybody's story has value, And when we tell our stories, instead of trying to hide what's happened to our, husband or our
Right.
father, it helps everyone because more and more people know that they're not alone.
Right.
They find comfort and knowledge and support in the book,
Right.
in the story.
Mhm.
And then it can also be used to create voices that go beyond that small scope into our political world and legislatively, where people can then speak to Congress, the lawmakers, and start moving money into Alzheimer's research and Alzheimer's programs. And that's
It
how all of
affects
that stuff
everyone.
happens.
It
Yes,
affects
it affects
everyone.
everyone. I very rarely meet someone who has not been touched by Alzheimer's or dementia. When I started this, a lot of times, especially when I was a new nurse and working in the Alzheimer's field, people thought I was nuts when I would talk about what I did every day. They didn't understand it, and I was young too, so they'd say, why is this young woman talking about such a morbid thing? But now it's everywhere. Very rarely do I meet anyone who can say, oh, I don't know anybody that has that disease.
Right. And it's very, very upsetting when someone that you care so much about ends up forgetting things, essential things that you know that a few months back they would have remembered, and you can see the deterioration.
Yes, it's very deeply personal,
Right.
and the person may forget who you are, and that they always may remember that you're someone they love, because the love never goes away, and the feelings don't go away. Emotions are still intact. They may not be able to explain them.
Right.
But when you have, your mom looks at you and doesn't know who you are, or asks you who you are, it's devastating. It rocks their world.
So when you're in a situation of community with other people that are going through this and talking about how they've handled it.
Well, that's invaluable.
Right.
People need to do more of that, and often people don't have time, or they don't know how. They don't know where to go to get assistance. The local Alzheimer's Association is a wonderful place to call and to get help. They have a lot of supportive materials, classes, workshops, so that's a great place for people to reach out for help.
I had heard also that some organizations actually give the caregiver a break. Like they'll have someone available for the caregiver to, so that they can take a day off or, go to a movie or do something for themselves.
They do. They have memory cafes, which are for people mainly in the early stages of the disease.
Right.
Where they can go and have socialization, and you would, drop off your loved one, and then you would be free to go out and do what you need to do, knowing that they would be safe
so
and
much
they're
available.
in a good environment where they can socialize and maybe do something different and get out of the house. So that's very important. And a lot of agencies offer respite care as well, but people have to pay for that, which can be another problem. So that's not free, unfortunately.
So tell us a little bit about your plans and your group's plans for the future.
Well, we sadly came to the realization that as much as we love books and we love to read, not everyone's a reader. And not everybody has time to read. So although we have all these beautiful resources, written resources, books and blogs, we needed to find another avenue to get them into people's hands. So one of the things we did was, when we created our first anthology, we turned it into an audiobook so that somebody could listen to that and get the gist of what we're doing and get some help. But we're going to start a podcast.
Okay.
So we'll be interviewing our authors, and they'll be telling their stories and giving advice and tips on how to get through the caregiving experience. And I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be doing it. I have to learn everything because I don't know anything about how to do a podcast, but I'll figure it out.
So now is your research time.
Yes, the research time. Yes, and we have a couple of helpers, benefactors that are being very generous with us too to help us be successful. So I think we'll be good.
Good.
And we certainly won't run out of opportunities to interview people, because we already have over 200 potential candidates, and we grow every day. People contact us wanting to become a part of AlzAuthors. So our blog is booked until May of next year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we're 6 months ahead of schedule. So
Good.
unfortunately, it doesn't dry up. So that's a good and a bad thing, I suppose.
Well, it's a good thing because that means people are getting together.
Yes, people are writing their
And
stories.
they're reaching out and they're writing, yeah.
Yes,
That's
and
great.
I'd like to just say a little bit about how to write your story or tell your story if
That
you
would
know,
be
you're
great,
dealing with
yeah.
Alzheimer's, dementia, or any kind of life-altering event or an illness. It
That was
doesn't
the
have
next
to be
question I was
Alzheimer's.
going to ask
Yeah.
you.
So many of the people who have succeeded in publishing their book did so because they kept some kind of a notebook or a journal throughout the process. So if you're in that situation, you might want to start writing things down. And there are other ways that you can chronicle your story if you don't want to write like that. One way would be to have your own blog, which doesn't necessarily have to be public, but you could have a private blog or even a Facebook page where you could write every day what's happening
Right.
with mom and dad or whoever it is, and even just to share with other families so that they can stay in the loop. And a lot of people use that. And there are websites that are even dedicated to that. And then what you have is you have all that backlog of information. So if you are a person who is capable of taking that and turning it into a story, a cohesive story, you have all the information that you need. And then many of the authors that we have in our group have published on their own, and some of them have managed to procure a publishing company. It doesn't really matter. What I like to say about our authors is these are just ordinary people who went through this and chose to tell their story. They're not famous. These are not professional writers. They may never write another book. You know, never heard of them before, but their story is important. So I encourage people to keep track and to tell their stories.
Now, I understand that you teach several classes on publishing.
Yes, I
Wanna
teach
tell us?
classes in self-publishing at 3 different colleges here in the Hudson Valley. So mainly how to publish a book with Amazon, and we also cover the whole marketing piece of book publishing, which is like really hard. Getting the book written and published is a lot easier than trying to market it, in my opinion. So I teach classes on how to blog, how to do social media, how to create graphics for your social media and your blog, how to collaborate with other authors.
Okay.
That seems to be my expertise. And there's one more, maybe it's a 6-class series. There's going to be one on how to launch a book.
Okay.
That'll be the next one. So I'm pretty busy with that. There are a lot of people, you know, just out in this area who are either writing or have written or planning to write a book of all kinds. So it's interesting.
So, can you give us maybe a little pointers on what you suggest as far as marketing? Because you said that seemed to be the most difficult part.
Yes. So just because you publish a book and it's in the Amazon store doesn't mean anyone's going to find it unless they're really looking for it. So you need to make it discoverable by using social media and also by having your own home on the internet, which could be a blog or just a website. It doesn't have to be anything
Right.
expensive or elaborate. It just needs to be your place on the web that tells people, you know, who you are and what you have to offer and how they can get it. So that's what we've had to do with AlzAuthors. When we first started out, we each had our own social media, we had our own websites, and then everything came about really slowly. It wasn't like this epiphany where one day we said, oh, we should do all these things. Everything came about one at a time. So the first thing we did, we created a hashtag. So you want to have hashtags that relate to your book. Ours is AlzAuthors, obviously. And we were founded on Twitter, so we opened up our own Twitter account for
Right.
AlzAuthors, so you can go there and see us every day. And now Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, we use all of that. And then after a year, you know, blogging and posting on other blogs, we said, duh, why don't we have our own blog?
Right.
That's like the next natural step. So the first month we did that, we published in June. We put out 5 posts a week for 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, when we actually found all these people that were willing to write for us, and we had such a good time, we said, well, why don't we just keep doing this, but we'll do it once a week. So that was in 2016, and we're still going strong into 2020.
Right.
So that was a very successful endeavor. So, you know, people can find us on our blog, on our
Right.
website, AlzAuthors.com. So if you had a book, you would want to have some kind of a website with your name. and it would tell people about you and your book and where they can buy the book.
Right.
So that's pretty much what our website consists of.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. So I'd like to ask you, how do you see the other media, like film, TV, etc., magazines dealing with this topic, and what is your feeling about that?
I think that as more and more the stigma and the silence that is attached to an Alzheimer's diagnosis
Right.
is withered away. More and more people are getting out there with their stories, and so it's gradually coming into mainstream media and film, especially with the film Still Alice, which was a huge film when that came out, and the woman who starred in it, Julianne Moore, won the Academy Award. So that was a big one. And there are a lot of independent filmmakers doing documentaries where they actually go into people's homes and meet with them. One's coming up with Daphne Glover Ferrier, who I had the opportunity to meet, and unfortunately I don't remember the name of the film, but I can get that for you. And I just read yesterday of a man and his wife, because the grandfather had Alzheimer's. They did a photographic journey, and they went out and interviewed people, and they did beautiful photography. It's in Massachusetts right now, and that's kind of a traveling photo exhibit, which I wanted to bring to the Hudson Valley. And there's a lot of documentaries on PBS and things like that. And there's even music, because we found that music is very beneficial for people, especially in late stage Alzheimer's, who are
Definitely.
unresponsive, and they hear music or songs from their
time.
time,
Yeah.
and it wakes them up, and they can even sing the songs. They remember the music. So there's a big effort in the music industry to provide music programs for people.
Have you found that faith is important for people when they're dealing with these situations with Alzheimer's and dementia?
Absolutely, especially if these are people who have been practicing faith throughout their lives. Often people in the midst of an Alzheimer's journey are in despair and may feel that God has forsaken them, and why are we going through this awful thing? Why is this happening to my mom or my dad or my husband? So faith can be a very important component, but the issue is that many times people don't have the freedom to practice faith anymore. They can't get to church. They can't bring their loved one. The loved one is not, can't sit through a service.
Right.
Or a mass or anything without being disruptive, and a lot of times people, they're embarrassed, so they don't want to bring that person, and they can't leave that person, so now they can't go themselves. And it kind of all ties into the issues of isolation and abandonment.
Right.
But there are many churches and religious organizations that are now offering services for people who have Alzheimer's and dementia. They offer a memory cafe. I've heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be something that would be going on during services, so that the caregiver could go to a service and know that their loved one was in a safe place, maybe even having some kind of their own service or whatever they could handle to do. And there's an organization called Clergy Against Alzheimer's that is an interfaith organization of many different professionals, some of whom are in AlzAuthors, and their mission is to help by using faith and
Right.
using churches and synagogues and other places to support people who have Alzheimer's or their caregivers as well.
So I really appreciate you coming on,
Thank you so much for
And
letting me come and
all
bring my
of your
books.
wonderful books and all that you're doing, and we're going to keep our eye out looking for your events.
Yes, I have one coming up at Mount St. Mary College in February, where I'm going to tell the story of AlzAuthors and bring the whole collection that I have. And that's a fun time. And then my class schedule, which is on my website.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.